Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The total eclipse of the sun over North America forecast for April 8th provides a truly unique opportunity to study the effects of the sun on the Earth's atmosphere, including how it can affect terrestrial communications. Last time a total solar eclipse passed the United States was in 2017, but before that we hadn't seen one since 1979. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Kevin Diaz is our Wallops Island reporter here on Delmarva Public Media, and he joins us in the studio this afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
So what is unique then about this particular eclipse?
Well, it's a unique opportunity because, as you mentioned, these things don't come up very often. The next one won't be visible from the United States until 2044. That's 20 years from now. This is also a total eclipse. You know, listeners might remember that we had an eclipse in the western part of the United States just last October. That was not a total eclipse. It was what they call an annular eclipse, which is like a ring of fire eclipse, where you see the outer edges, the outer fringes of the sun around the moon. This is a total eclipse. The path of totality goes from southern Texas all the way up to Maine, and it's a chance to actually measure what the sudden absence of sunlight does to the upper atmosphere, what scientists call the ionosphere. And of course, it's a one-day thing, and so they don't have a lot of time to work around it. They have to be very precise in the timing of everything that they do.
But in terms, by the way, of how this works, now they're sending up 3 rockets in order to try to figure out what's going on. What are they doing on that level?
Yeah, the idea is to shoot up a rocket just before the peak eclipse, one right during the peak eclipse, and one right after the peak eclipse. And those rockets will be between 30 minutes and 45 minutes apart, so that they can get all of the various permutations of these what they call perturbations, in other words, disturbances in the upper atmosphere caused by light coming in, going away. And each one of these rockets, these are like 60-foot rockets if you want to. These are not these giant Apollo or Atlas rockets. These are like 60-foot little rockets that just go straight up. They fly for about 10 minutes. And while they're up there, they shoot out these little sub-payloads, they call them, with all these instruments. Each one, I think, has 4 or 5 sub-payloads. And they go out about 100 kilometers, and they basically give you data points from all these various perspectives. So there's a lot of, what do they call it, redundancy, I guess, in the collection of the data.
And I assume that they obviously are trying to track how this changes over time because they spread them out.
Right, yeah. And the main thing that they're concerned about is being able to tell how the effect of the sunlight itself, the sudden absence thereof, affects what they call this sea of particles that envelops the entire planet. So they're doing this under the direction of an investigator, a professor of engineering from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Florida. His name is Dr. Arrow Barjatia. I always butcher it every time I say it. My apologies, Professor. He's a really cool guy. He's literally a rocket scientist, the first one I've ever known. Colorful guy, shows up at the launch pad for the media wearing red Chuck Converse tennis shoes. He's wearing sunglasses. He's got his shades on. It's a cloudy day. So he's got a very distinct accent. He's a native of India, but he speaks very clearly, and he speaks in ways that are easy for laymen to understand what it is that they're trying to look for. And if you want, we can even run a clip of him describing this sea of particles in the void of space.
It is a sea of particles. It's hard because we don't see it, but you can imagine it as ocean. Just think of it as an ocean filled with waves and disturbances, and you've got, waves breaking into smaller waves and white froth. And those white froth, the wave breaking, the white caps as we sometimes call them, are the small-scale disturbances that impact our radio communications. But ionosphere is just like an ocean that we can't see, but it's above our head. It is exactly that.
So what kind of impact then are we expecting then from this eclipse?
Well, they've been studying these effects for decades now. So it's not completely new. But each one of these eclipses gives them a chance to study it anew and to develop the data that they've already collected from past phenomena like this. And they also look at things like thunderstorms and cloudy days and auroras and all kinds of things that happen up in outer space or even in our atmosphere that can have effects on the outer atmosphere. So they know something about this. This enables them to further their knowledge. But another part of it is that, and this was my question for the professor, was how is the sudden absence of sunlight any different from what happens every day when we have a sunset or a sunrise? Why all the fuss about this? Why is this a major scientific event? And so here's Bharatiya explaining how this is very different from what we ordinarily experience.
The difference between normal sunset and sunrise is, first of all, it's a little bit slower. Second, it is global. So you can imagine it's a gentle go down on the entire longitude of the planet and then gentle come up. Versus here, it's kind of like a stone is being dropped into the ocean and being dragged, because the eclipse and the sunset and sunrise is very local, a small spherical position right under the path. So it creates different dynamics than sunset and sunrise, but the physical processes are the same. And this is just a great experiment to do to understand the basic physics within that 1.5 2 hour launch window. Most other sounding rockets have to sit out for multiple weeks waiting for event to happen and then hope they can launch with perfect timing.
Does this, by the way, give us a sense about what it might be like if the sun weren't there, that there was some dimming kind of quality? I know in the past, for instance, in the Earth's history, we've had issues where the atmosphere has been actually completely covered, leading to the extinction of various species. Does this give us also a sense about that, do you think?
I don't know if they're looking on that cosmic of a scale, because here they're looking for very small, granular changes in the amount of sunlight and how it affects a very specific part of the upper atmosphere, which I think goes from something like about 50 miles up to about 400 miles up, or just shy of that. So it's a very specific thing that they're looking at here that has important implications for, actually, as you mentioned, terrestrial communication in your open. These disturbances that they're studying have the ability to interfere with things like satellite. The satellites are out on these glide paths around the planet, radio communications here on Earth, and most importantly, especially in this region where we have a lot of people, sailors, GPS communications which come from satellites, obviously. So it's a very specific thing that they're looking at, and it's important to know too, there's a very narrow window that they have to study these effects, because again, these eclipses don't come up very often. But it means that as far as rocket launches go, they're on a very tight schedule here. A lot of times when you blow off rockets from Earth, you've got a window of opportunity. Here they're on a schedule. It's dictated by this path of totality. And unfortunately, that path goes in an arc, basically a diagonal arc from southwest to northeast. It'll be apparently, latest weather reports are that's going to be really good up in New England. Not so good in the plain states because of cloud cover, storms, and all of that. But it won't be visible here in the Mid-Atlantic region or the Delmarva Peninsula. What will be visible, though, is the rocket launch, or the rocket launches. There'll be 3 of them going from Wallops Island. But yeah, this is a very white knuckle sort of launch for these engineers, because they have to follow a very specific timetable, and it's not very forgiving.
And obviously, we're also going to be looking at what kind of impact then obviously it's going to have in terms of satellites and satellite communication, that kind of thing, terrestrial stuff.
Right, exactly. And Barjatia took us through that as well. He was there. He was sort of the star of the show. I want to point out for listeners, Wallops Island is essentially it's a very tightly guarded place. It's like a military base. In fact, back I think in the Second World War, it was a military base. Now it's a research facility, but they also do a lot of top secret stuff. When they bring reporters in, you have to be careful where you point your cameras, what you're describing. It's very carefully guarded. But so they bring in a lot of reporters a few days ago to sort of explain the science. And Barjatia, who is this professor, he brings his students with him, by the way, from Florida. They're helping him out. It's a very collegial kind of environment. There's probably a dozen or two people who are involved in this mission as far as being close as investigators. And anyway, so he took us through the supposed or the potential communications problems that could result. And here, let's listen to him talk about the radio interference.
All of Earth's communications to satellites go through the ionosphere, as well as over the horizon radar, over the horizon radio signals reflect and refract off of the Earth's ionosphere. So any disturbance that happens in the ionosphere will end up goofing around with your radio signal.
Now, in terms, by the way, of this eclipse, I guess we shouldn't be looking at it directly. I guess we need to be careful about it.
Yeah, when we were out at Wallops Island, they were handing out those special glasses that you use to look up at the sun. Again, I don't think that's going to be an issue for listeners here in this region, although if it were me, I wouldn't be staring up at the sky on April 8th, just as a precaution. Another thing that's of regional interest here in our area is they're really hoping that they can clear the entire sea range around Wallops Island. That's near Chincoteague. For those of you who know the local geography, they don't want any boats out there because these rockets, as I mentioned before, they only go up for about 10 minutes. They shoot up at about 80 degrees over the ocean, do their thing up there with their payloads, and then they come back down and they're just going to drop into the sea. They're not coming in with parachutes, which they do when they land, on dry land, and like they did in New Mexico back in October for the annular eclipse that we were just talking about. So these things are going to be dropping into the ocean. So it would be a really good idea if you're a boater to not be sailing just west of Wallops, just east of Wallops Island. And if you do, they're going to be asking mariners to stay clear. But if you do, you could actually interfere with this launch. They absolutely want you, the place has to be clear. So any ship passing through is going to get in the way. And that would be an incredibly lost opportunity because these people have been spending months, if not years, preparing for this launch.
Any sense about then, after all this is over, how long is it going to take to evaluate this kind of data? I mean, they give me an indication about that? Or?
Well, the data will be instantaneous.
Right.
The analysis of the data, as always, will be subject to scholarly research. And I'm sure Dr. Barjatia will be working on this for some time to come. Again, he won't have another chance for a total eclipse here until 2044. So they're hoping to replicate and build on the data that they developed just last October when they did the same thing, shot up 3 rockets 30, 45 minutes apart just before, during, and after the peak eclipse. So they're hoping to be able to do that again. And this time it'll be more exciting because it's not just an annular or partial eclipse. This one is a total eclipse.
And now, again, the next opportunity they may have is when?
2044.
2044, okay.
Yeah, at least from the United States.
Right. So we'll have to wait for another 20-some-odd years or so before we get another shot at this.
another shot at developing the set of data that I'm sure that they're already working on. And I think realistically, I think they know what they're going to find. I think they're just looking for confirmation. They already know that disturbances in the upper atmosphere can mess around or goof around, as the doctor said, with the satellite communications here on Earth.
We've been speaking with Kevin Diaz. He's covering Wallops Island and the launch on Monday to see how the solar eclipse actually affects the Earth's atmosphere. And we appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Milton approves of major development. The city of Salisbury is looking for a partner for a homeless facility known as the Ann Street Village. Wallops prepares for next week's solar eclipse, and we have a new report on the production of plastics and pollution. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. First, we turn to Coastal Point reporter Susan Canfora. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Don.
First, we've got this town of Milton, which has approved a development, which is expected to have about 1,200 homes or more spread out over about 450 acres. What do we know about it, and how significant is it in terms of the city itself?
Well, we know that the town council has approved it. It's a large housing development on the Sand Hill Road area, in the Sand Hill Road area. It's called the Granary at Draper Farm. And like you said, it will be spread over 450 acres and have 1,200 new homes. The name Granary means a storehouse for grain. Those who are close to the project are saying that this new development will completely change the landscape of Milton. The council approved the development, but it's been in the planning stages for some time, and now the first phase is close to starting, meaning construction of the first homes should begin this spring. Milton is located in Sussex County on the Broad Hill River. It's a fairly small town with a population of about 3,800, but with this new development, that population we will see increase. So as we see this development continue, we'll certainly keep you informed.
So in terms, by the way, of this, I guess it involves a convergence of communications, and there's a whole situation with trying to put this all together with biking trails and all that kind of thing.
That seems to be the trend, especially in Sussex County, where Coastal Point is, and what I cover. There seems to be, with these developments, the best ways to get the approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission and sometimes the Board of Zoning Appeal is to include a lot of nature areas, land that's preserved, so that you see deer and ducks and geese, and running trails and walking trails. That seems to be kind of the trend with a lot of these new developments. So that's what was, even with some of the health developments we see in Millsboro, there's a new health development coming, and they have all of that, running trails, walking trails, health trails. So that's not unusual, and it seems to be the trend. And it's a great idea. It's great to preserve that land.
We also have, a special tax district that goes along with it as well.
That's my understanding as well, too, yes.
We also have a meeting that took place in Ocean Pines, the economic impact of the collapse of the bridge, Francis Scott Key Bridge. What do we understand, at least at this point, in terms of specifics?
Ocean Pines was involved. The Ocean Pines Chamber was involved. It was a U.S. Chamber of Commerce webinar by Zoom, so all the chambers anywhere in the country were able to join. Ocean Pines joined, Salisbury joined, the Chambers of Commerce this week. They all gathered for this informative webinar. It happened to talk about the March 26th collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, and particularly how that collapse will affect the supply chain and the economy, because cargo, as you know, is delivered to the Port of Baltimore. I talked to Bill Chambers, who's the director of the Salisbury Chamber, who said just about every business in Salisbury will be affected in some way, and with the car industry really expected to be take a hard hit. Baltimore is the second largest port for automobile imports in the country. The longer that channel is blocked, the slower the delivery of new vehicles. The agricultural community will also be impacted, especially farmers who are expecting tractors and other machinery coming from China or Korea. And of course, it's at a bad time of year because this is spring and farmers are preparing the soil and getting ready to plant. That season is ready to start. Bill Chambers said any goods being shipped will have to be diverted to ports in Philadelphia, Norfolk, Charleston, Wilmington, but those ports don't have the same capacity as the Port of Baltimore, so he said he's heard shipping could be diverted to the West Coast, and then items will be brought here by rail or truck. The longer the delay, again, the worse the impact. Mr. Chambers is in twice weekly briefings with government agencies, and he said at midweek that he learned huge pieces of the Key Bridge have now buried themselves in layers of mud at the bottom of the bay, and that's presenting an engineering challenge to cut away those pieces and not really knowing how far down in that mud they're buried. He estimated another 3 weeks before the main channel is open. Maryland Governor Wes Moore has said the bridge collapse will have a global effect, and Bill did not disagree. He said if the problem can be resolved in the next 60 to 90 days, the impact won't be as severe, but if it lasts longer, the impact will be severe. So we're hoping for the best. He also told me that each year, $80 billion is generated in shipping out of the Port of Baltimore, and there are 15,000 employees working at that port. So it's a very busy, bustling port, and they are ready to get back to work, Don.
Are there any efforts to try to prepare for the long haul, or did he indicate?
They really don't know at this point. They're kind of taking it day by day. It all depends on when they can get those huge pieces of steel out of the mud and get the ships moving again. There is a small channel, I think he said an 11-foot channel, 11-foot deep channel, that could carry like some grain for Purdue, but they're not sure if the barges that carry that grain need a deeper water than that. So that part they're still looking into. But the economic impact is expected to be considerable.
Yeah, because I know that, for instance, right now it's a very small area that they're able to traverse. And mostly now it's being used, obviously, for just simply trying to dig this stuff out and get the bridge out of the way. But it sounds like they're going to be in for a long haul here.
That's what he said, yes. He says very much concerned. So it's mostly timing. If they can get things moving within the next 2 to 3 months, then the impact won't be as severe. But we're coming into summer now, and it's not only the planting season, but a lot of businesses are open, a lot of tourism, and all these businesses gear up this time of year. Not so much in Salisbury, but certainly in the tourist areas, and time is of the essence.
We also have, by the way, the Millsboro City Council. They're looking at ethics rules. Why do they need ethics rules?
One of the councilwomen, Kimberly Kahn, who is pleasantly outspoken and very easy to talk to and very open, very transparent. In fact, when she ran, her platform was a very strong part of her platform was on transparency. She wanted to see the Millsboro Council be more open with the public and for the residents of Millsboro. And she came up with this kind of document that has a lot of proposals in it. Council had a workshop this week to talk about those guidelines. Nobody voted on it. They want her to make a couple changes, but a code of conduct and ethics was discussed. And one thing she told me was that she's seen some council members over the years, she didn't specifically say who, but some council members over the years have voted on things that affected relatives or people they work with, and there could have been some monetary gain. She said the Delaware Code is that if there's any monetary gain, ethically you're not supposed to vote on that if you're related to the person or married to the person or have a business relationship with the person. So that's one of the things she included in these guidelines. She told me that a lot of stuff is common sense. She said she sat in council meetings for a few years before she ran for office, and she's wanted to bring this up since she was elected because I want to make sure we're all on the same page and make sure there is a leave behind for incoming council members. She said she feels the ethics are not tight enough, and she knows of instances when council members have voted on matters that they shouldn't have voted on. She's going to make a couple changes that she was asked to make by the council members, and then it's going to go back before the council, and she's going to ask them to vote on it and pass it.
Any reaction from the other council members about this code?
They liked it. They said there were a few housekeeping measures. There were a few, some of the wording she wanted her to change to include everybody, and a few little changes in tenses and verb tenses. Mm-hmm. But overall they said they think it's a good idea to have this document. They've never had anything like this before. They've never had guidelines for the Millsboro Council, and they think it's a good idea.
Also, for the audience as well, she wanted to make clear some of the rules and so on. I mean, I don't know that there's been anything rowdy going on there, but
well, she did. She was since she's been a councilwoman. She has been able to make one change, and that is that people are allowed to come and speak before the council. It used to be they had to sign up first; they had to be on the agenda. Now they can come and speak. They can sign up right before the meeting and come and speak up to 2 minutes. That's pretty much what the time limit is with most of these council meetings. And they don't always answer. They don't always get an answer that night, but they can at least bring their concerns before the council.
The other thing, by the way, about conflict of interest is that I know that, for instance, as you indicated a moment ago, the code says that if you're benefiting or if your relative is benefiting or so on, you can't. But it does seem as if there are a lot of people who are sitting on these city councils who are like, say, in real estate and other industries where they may not be affected personally, but on the other hand, they're interested in the industry itself.
And they might know somebody who knows somebody, and it might just look bad, but she'd like to see it all above board. She's very thorough and very efficient, and she likes everything to be in writing. And there was an incident in in Selbyville a couple of weeks ago where the mayor was able to find a lawnmower for sale, and he approved the sale of the lawnmower without going before the council. And it was just something he did to help the town. He didn't see anything wrong with it. And one of the council members challenged him in a meeting and said, "I didn't know anything about it. It should have been part of the meeting minutes." So it was just the way they do business in some of these small towns, and he didn't mean any harm, but she'd like to see it. Everybody do the same thing, the same way, and have a list of guidelines.
A bit cozy, I guess they are.
Yeah, yes, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
Cozy, that's it. Finally, we got Delaware's pushing ahead with the state-sponsored savings plan mandated for employees. What would we have it? I guess it's called Expanding Access for Retirement and Necessary Saving Program.
Yes, and the acronym spells EARNS, E-A-R-N-S. It's a new program sponsored by the State Treasurer's Office in Delaware, and it's going to allow those who work for small businesses with at least 5 W-2 employees to start retirement savings plans. It's called Delaware EARNS, and as you said, that's an acronym for Delaware Expanding Access for Retirement and Necessary Savings. The program director is Ted Griffith, and he had a webinar a couple weeks ago, and he outlined the program, and he called it a vehicle for financially empowering our Delaware workers. It's going to be run completely by the Treasurer's Office. The employers of these small businesses are required to register, but they don't have to match employer contributions to the Roth IRA. They don't have to educate employees or anything else. The Treasurer's Office is going to take care of everything. The program is set to take effect in July, and it's for employees who work in Delaware but don't necessarily live in Delaware, like me. I work in Delaware, but I live in Maryland, so I can be part of this as well. It will be voluntary, but unless they opt out, all the employees will be automatically enrolled. They can have 1 to 5% of their gross pay withdrawn and placed in that Roth IRA. Also at the webinar was State Treasurer Colleen Davis, and she said when she first took office, she began advocating for retirees because she was worried about those who haven't saved for retirement. And because 150,000 Delaware residents don't have a retirement plan. So she called this a retirement crisis in Delaware and nationally, and said 70% of Americans are not ready to retire and 50% have no savings at all. So Delaware EARNS is in place to help those people.
And I guess there's the average household, I guess about $2,500 for retirement, I guess. But when you look at, for instance, near retirement households may only have something like about $14,000. I mean, it seems to be pretty thin.
If that, yeah, a lot of them have nothing at all.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the burden on local businesses, obviously I guess you have to 5 or more employees. Any issue there?
I don't think so. It's very new, and they are going to have a pilot program, so he's going to be able to introduce it slowly to these businesses. Coastal Point will be one of them. The paper that I work for has more than 5 employees, of course, and we'll be able to be part of it. I haven't heard anything except good things from the employees, most of them who are very interested in it. And, you can save, I think he said most people can save $7,000 a year, and if you're over 50, you can save another $1,000 a year. I guess if you're 59 and a half or over 50, there's some stipulation. Right. Where you can save a little bit more. So most people seem to be pretty happy with it. I think it's really good all the way around.
So is there a crisis then in Delaware, or is this just something that they decided to go ahead?
Colleen Davis seems to think there's a crisis.
Yeah.
A lot of Delaware residents are just not ready to retire. I think that's a problem nationwide. People just don't have the money to retire, or they just don't save. They don't think about their future. And a lot of them, 50% of Delaware residents have no savings at all and just can't retire. So this would certainly help.
So Delaware has a lot of retirees. What's the story with that? Again, it's obviously important that for a lot of them, that obviously other people are able to do this thing, to be able to retire.
They retire. They come here and retire on the coast. They retire in the tourism area. They like being near the beach. But some of them just don't have any savings at all. Some of them come here and they take jobs at some of these small businesses as after retirement jobs. And this program would help them tremendously in their later years. Well, while they're still energetic enough to work.
Like yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
45 years and older, they're about 15 times more likely to save through payroll reductions.
Yes, and it's easy. It's it's a few dollars here and there. You don't really miss it. 5% of your gross pay. It's every week or every other week, and that's exactly how it's going to be handled. And the nice thing is that the employers don't have to do anything. They don't have to match any contributions or explain it or have seminars to explain how it works. The state's going to take care of it completely.
Are they going to jump right in? I mean, or does the employer, at least do we know, going to have to fill out paperwork, or is that all coming down through the state?
Yeah, they have to register. There's a website, and they have to register by I think by the end of May, if I'm not mistaken. It's all on the Treasurer's Office website, and then it starts on July 1st. So that's pretty quick. They're going to get it started that quick. For government, for the way government's moved, that's pretty fast.
And any idea how many people do they think are going to sign up?
He didn't know. I asked him that. He didn't know quite yet. He said he hoped it would be successful because you can opt out. You don't have to, you don't have to be a member of it, but you can. And I would think most people would want to take advantage of it. It's all protected. It's all tax protected, and the money goes into stocks right away, just like any other Roth IRA.
Yeah, I guess she says that between about 150,000, 200,000 workers, I guess, are not offered the retirement plan at this point, at least in the state.
And not in small businesses.
Yeah,
they usually aren't, especially with 5 employees. That's just a little tiny business. So this is a great idea, and I think Colleen Davis should be thanked, and for having this idea. It's a great idea. Probably something apparently the former treasurers haven't thought about, but it was foremost on her mind when she was elected.
We've been speaking with Susan Canfora. She's a reporter for Coastal Point. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you, Don.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.